Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the next part of the artifact set review. We're almost done. Today it's time to talk about the second part of the items, the armor. Let's get going. Okay, so first let me say armor is not that great in my experience unless they have like some good ability just for the armor itself. Usually armor is not very good, like health items usually serve you much better and do a lot more in my experience. The rate on health is just much better than on armor, and armor past the first 2 points of armor usually doesn't do a whole lot. The first 2 points of armor nullify the impact of melee creeps and also cards like Conflict Rate on March of the Machines, but past that it only really matters against like heroes, and taking 1 damage less from a hero is not that impressive, and against some of the bigger creeps, which are not gonna land in front of your hero that often anyway, because your opponent will try and avoid putting them in front of the hero more often than not, I think. So yeah, the first 2 points of armor are decent. After that, they are massive diminishing returns, I think. Also, with 2 armor, you often you soak up the majority of retaliate from stuff like Burning Oil or retaliate from Legion Commander. There is sometimes a 3 retaliate from the signature card of Darkseer, but yeah, other than that, most retaliate and cleave in a lot of cases is 2, so 2 armor also soaks up that. So that's like all the splash damage stuff. Anyway, first off we have leather armor, the basic armor. In limited I sometimes end up with 1 as a filler if I just want some cheap items, especially in like blue-green, but lately I've been trying to avoid even that because I've been pretty underwhelmed with the generic effect that 1 armor has, and it just felt kinda like negligible to me, but I could be wrong there. And in constructed this barely sees play except for some blue-green lists that are very bad at generating gold to combo decks, and for example Hype's list had 4 Traveler's Cloak and 4 leather armor, and 3 Traveler's Cloak, 3 leather armor and 3 Blink Dagger as item deck, just because the gold generation before you play a sweeper is so bad that you can barely scrounge to gather gold for one of the basic items. But yeah, your average constructed deck won't want these cards. Then we have Barbed Mail. That card is also kind of bad in the sense that it is basically cost the same amount of gold as a short sword and a leather armor, but is combined in 1 card, and retaliate is overall I would say worse than 2 attack would be, even though it can have upsides over 2 attack. Sure, like I said already with the weapons, the fact that it goes into 1 slot and you can have like an attack item and this is part of the reason why this has the rate it has, but you already have to be pretty well equipped for that to matter. Otherwise you much rather buy a short sword and a leather armor than a Barbed Mail. So these compounded items, even though they are compounded with limited slots and stuff, need to have a better rate to be viable, really, and other people have addressed this before, like Swim, since when the point of the slot limitations mattering just comes way too late for justifying the almost extra cost for the same or worse combined stats in 1 card than you would have from 2 smaller pieces. So that's the problem there. So yeah, this card is unplayable in constructed and even not very good in limited, but can sometimes find its way in. It's another way to sort of help your blue and green heroes win against lower health heroes and melee creeps, for example, and mitigate damage in the process, but it's a pretty poor card. Next we have Stonehall Plate. That card once again is much worse than Stonehall Cloak. First of all, it costs a gold more. Second of all, yeah, the rate of 1 armor versus 4 base health is much worse. Sure, the 1 armor is about as good maybe as the +2 health that the Stonehall Cloak gets, but being 1 gold cheaper and starting out with a much better immediate impact easily beats out Stonehall Plate. And once again, like I said, the diminishing returns on additional armor also make this much worse. Like this card basically would have to be cheaper than Stonehall Clock rather than more expensive to be able to compete with it. And you only have so much gold and so many slots in your item deck, and you really don't want to waste your gold or your slots on this. You much rather have your heroes have like all one health item and most of them one attack item, and then you just fill out the rest of your stuff with random stuff from the secret shop with the gold you have left after that, rather than ever putting this in your item deck. And at that point, you will probably want better things from the secret shop than this, because the later you buy it, the worse. Next we have Chainmail, another card that is 2 leather armor for 1 more gold. We've seen this trend with the short sword versus broadsword, and it's the same here. And the problem is basically the same. Although like the 2 armor from Chainmail are the perfect amount of armor, as I mentioned, so that helps it a bit. And I guess makes the card an okay-ish item sometimes in the item deck of a limited deck, but in constructed it's pretty bad, and even in limited it's not great. Especially when for 1 gold more you get something like this, Races of Sacrifice, which has the same armor benefit, but let's be real, the 2 armor on this are more a side benefit. The real deal here is the active. The active actually is really good. It can make your hero trade 2 or 3 for 1, or like 2 for 1 and kill a melee creep in addition to that, and also makes a hole in the enemy defenses, letting the 2 allied neighbors of the hero that you blow up usually hit the tower, which can be the difference between winning and losing. This card has been very good for me in limited and aggressive decks to punch through lanes and stuff, or just get ahead on the board. I've been really liking this card. I basically want one in all my black-red or blue-black aggro decks if I can get one. That has been great there. Outside of that, it's not as good, but it's still a very solid item to have in a deck that can afford it gold-wise. Just pretty flexible and can get you some nice tempo and or card advantage even. Then we have Kinfolk Plate. It's another like multi-armor thing. You get +1 armor and then plus armor for each attacker, so it's basically a better chainmail, costs 1 gold more and gives you the same amount of armor as long as you have a blocker, and then have an attacker, which you usually do, and then past that it kind of gives you more bonus, so it has an overall, I'd say, a bit better gold to effect ratio than chainmail, but it's still not very good really. And the 1 gold more can kind of make all the difference, and the upside past the first 2 armor is not even that good, so even though the ratio is better, it ends up being a slightly worse item. Now this is a solid armor item for a change. First of all, you get the base 2 armor that you want that I talked about, and it actually is a way to protect your melee creeps and kind of like make your lane push in, make your lane snowball a bit, because your creeps outlast the opposing creeps, and then you kind of start getting a wider lane and push in because your creeps stop trading. Kind of like the same effect that you see in a MOBA, where usually the creeps kind of just trade in the middle, but once you touch that balance by, for example, killing even only 1 opposing melee creep, suddenly the lane starts pushing in and your creeps overwhelm their stuff. It's kind of the same effect in this game with the random creep spawns. If your creeps don't trade and outlast the opposing ones, everything that goes to this lane makes the lane go wider rather than replace the creeps that traded. And yeah, some colors that aren't as good at this, especially for example red, because red neither has sweepers to clear, for example with Tower Barrage, clear half of the enemy melee creeps, nor does it have the like creep sustain that green has. So for like black or especially red that doesn't have really sweepers or ways to protect creeps, this can be pretty good to kind of make your lane sustain better and not be like pushed in as easily by the opponent or even push in on them. Then we have, obviously this is still only a limited concern really, I don't think that's something you want in Constructed. Then we have Ramas Quest. That card's not that great, it might seem nice, but it is pretty bad. 9 gold is very expensive, 1 armor is pretty weak, and healing 4 only goes every 2 turns, so you on average gain like 2 health a turn. So this is basically much worse than a Stonehall Cloak. Costs almost twice and has an overall worse effect. Sure, you can use it on any target, not just on the equipped unit, but the rate is so bad that it just really isn't worth it, and 9 gold is already pretty hard and basically locks you out of buying in the early turns every time you have it on top, so you have to be careful with it. Next we have Shield of Aquila. Once again the 2 base armor, and this time it gives the neighbors 3 armor instead of 1, so it protects them even more. It does you. This makes a lane really durable and a hero and can become really annoying, but 10 gold is a ton for most decks. In Limited and in Constructed it's too generic of an effect. That's usually just not how Constructed games play or what they revolve around that this matters. So yeah, 10 gold is a lot, takes probably till turn 3 unless you have gold generation. The earliest to get this and involves hero kills, and even then, yeah, it either might block you in the early turns at the top, or then later when you have 10-ish gold, 10, 15 gold, but this is not at the top of your item deck, but like 1 or 2 down, you buy something that costs like 5 and you had like 12 gold, and then you have 7 gold, and then you see this, so it stops you from spending further gold. That's why it's so important that a lot of your item deck is cheap, so you can, if you have a sizable amount of gold, you can buy through your item deck and buy multiple things at once, or that when you have few gold, you can at least buy 1 item. These big items have the issue of either blocking you from buying 1 cheap item, or stopping you from chain buying multiple items when you have more gold if they are in the wrong place in your item deck. That is a really big problem basically. But just effect-wise, the card is pretty strong. It's just the higher gold items are pretty restrictive in most decks. Then we have Seraphim Shield. It's another 2 armor item, times 13. It's a very expensive item, also a very unique and situational effect. All units in the lane have -2 attack. This is technically nice to kind of like slow down a lane. You kind of just defend a lane by putting a hero there with this, and then suddenly not a whole lot is happening in that lane anymore, and you kind of completely freeze that lane in a way. So that's what it can be nice for, but this is also one of those items that you basically only want to randomly get from the secret shop in that narrow situation where this is what you want to be doing, but you don't want to put it into your item deck in either format. But it can have quite interesting effects on the game. Feels like a lot of the items, especially the more unique and more expensive items, are mainly just there to be rolled in the secret shop. So I'm kind of glad that the secret shop exists and creates like diversity among item choices and items that you see in games and impact games. Because without it, most items would just never see the light of day in any format. Next we have Chainmail. 15 gold is a ton, and the card better be like really swinging the game for you, and 4 armor really isn't doing it. Also, there's the diminishing returns past the 2 to 3 armor that I mentioned, so this is just pretty underwhelming. Just don't dare to put this into your item deck in any format. It's just, no matter how much gold you have, this is bad. Next we have Shivas Guard. This, however, is a pretty sweet piece of item. I've bought it a couple times from the secret shop. It's quite nice. You modify a unit and its allied neighbors with 2 attack permanently, so that can be pretty strong and can really cripple a hero and some powerful creeps, and kind of stabilize or overwhelm a lane nicely every 2 turns. And yeah, the 2 base armor kind of give you the immunity against the most common splash damage sources that I mentioned. Then we have Helm of the Dominator. The 3rd armor is kind of a bit negligible here. Card would almost be as fine with the 2 armor, since you really spend the 19 gold to get control of an enemy creep every other turn. Can be very swingy, depends a bit on what your opponent's colors are and what he is doing. is definitely much better against red or green, where they have really powerful creeps, while against blue or black there are much fewer frequently popping up good targets for this, and that diminishes the impact of this. But since your opponent is usually either green or red, unless they are blue-black, you should have a decent chance to get some good targets. Just time it well and choose the lion wisely that you use it on, so they can't like play around it. This is definitely one of the better payoff cards in Limited and Constructed for gold generation decks, especially in Limited. In Constructed you probably go more for like Vesture of the Tyrant or Horn of the Alpha. But Helm is definitely even a decent option in Constructed, because in Constructed all the creeps that are seeing play usually are high quality creeps, so you're much more likely to get high impact targets for this than in Limited even. Then we have Vesture of the Tyrant. This is a pretty unique and pretty powerful thing, a really nice card for control decks in theory. Problem once again is the 9 in gold tag, so your deck needs to be like a gold based control deck. There I think are some blue-black money control decks that are built with this in mind. The rapid deployment plus the 3 armor to the tower and to the unit make a lane that has this, and this keeps coming back to, because it's also really hard to push out of the lane due to the rapid deployment. Really hard to take down. Like all the basic damage stuff doesn't do any damage. You basically can only damage the tower either by killing the wearer of this before combat, or by like or with some of the big creeps and heroes, and if the opponent can just reliably lock them out of dealing damage to the tower, you have no hope of taking down the tower realistically. It is a pretty hard card to beat in a lane most of the time in my experience. Especially if you not win like right after it dropped. And yeah, in Limited, once again, hard to be able to afford, but if you do, definitely a strong item. And last but not least, we have Shivas Guard. Only 1 armor for 25 gold, but the real power is in the active. You move equipped heroes, enemy neighbors to random other lanes. Another card that is a bit too situational and expensive to ever make it into an item deck, but man, can this like lock up a game if you get it from the item deck. I got it like from the item deck before in Limited games, and the effect is just so devastating. It completely destroys the lane that this is in. It's impossible to defend the lane and block the wearer and its allied neighbors, and that takes down the tower really quick. So can be pretty impressive in Limited, or even in Constructed, get it from the secret drop in the situations that I mentioned. But yeah, not something you want to put in your item deck. Alright, that concludes the armor. Tomorrow I will go over the last items, which are all the accessories, and I think 2 consumables that we have, or 3. And then we are finally done with the artifact set review, and I'll look into more artifact content like Constructed deck techs and stuff now that I have played more Constructed and feel more versed in Constructed. Okay, so yeah, as usual, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, hit the skull to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and also on Twitch if you want to catch me live streaming Artifact and other games. And if you want to help support the content, please consider whitelisting YouTube to help support it for free with ads, and you can find further information on ways to support the channel down in the description, as well as all the social media links, so you don't have to type it. Okay, that's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. This was the artifact set review with the armor items. I thank you for watching, and I see you next time. Bye!